Youth sports can be really hard, especially if you're wanting to raise your kid in ways that produce healthy adults when they're done playing. Each week on Healthy Sports Parents, we have conversations designed to help you keep your athlete mentally and emotionally healthy. Whether you're just starting out in rec ball or traveling every weekend to elite tournaments, we're here to help you strengthen your relationship with your kids through sports. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Corona and I'm the host of the show. Today we're joined by Edose Ibadin. Edose is a track athlete from Bowie, Maryland. In 2024, he represented his family's home country of Nigeria in the Paris Olympic Games, running in the 800 meter, and he's also represented them in multiple world championships as well. Before that, he ran in college for Hampton University, where he was an All-American in the 800 meter and the 4x400 relay, while earning a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He's the current Nigerian record holder in the 800 meter, and he runs professionally with Baltimore 800. Let's welcome in Edose Ibadin. Edose, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
So, hey, we always start asking about, well, introducing parents, but since you don't have kids yet, I'm going to flip the switch a little bit. And can you tell us about your parents and what it was like to have them and their support as you went through your journey growing up?
Yeah, so my parents immigrated to this country from Nigeria way before I was born, and they have been an integral part of my success as a person and as an athlete. They didn't put too much pressure on me, but they definitely more so prioritized grades more than anything. So they were more so like, make sure you're good academically, you know, do what you can athletically, but the main focus and the main priority is academics, which is typical for most immigrant parents usually.
Yeah, that's what I was like. You're describing the immigrant story right there. The child of immigrants, it's always like the school's coming first. We came here to give you a better opportunity, and school's going to come first no matter what.
Exactly.
So one of the first things when me and you first started DMing a couple months ago on Instagram, you told me that your parents never necessarily pushed you into your sport. And that's one of the things that seems to get some of the bigger debates in the social media comments is parents pushing kids versus parents supporting kids. So can you tell us what you felt growing? I mean, you've reached the highest levels in the world at this point. So like when you hear the difference between supporting you and pushing you, what do you think of when you hear that?
Yeah, when I think of support, I think of more so like getting the resources that you need for the sport. Like, for example, growing up, my parents bought me running shoes for track, or they picked me up from practice and took me to and from practice and things like that. And when I think of push, it's like they're too overly invested to the point where it doesn't become as fun for the kid. And that's one thing that I'm grateful for, that I really didn't get pushed so hard in my sport by my parents. I was pushed by my coaches, but not by my parents necessarily. And I see it a lot of athletes nowadays who are getting pushed really hard by their parents, like, oh, you should have made that shot, or you should have did this, or you should have did that. And I think sometimes that ruins the love for the sport for the kid, because then now it's like they're not even doing it. It's like, yeah, my parents are involved in this, but they're too involved to the point where I'm afraid to make mistakes. I think that's where it becomes challenging, to the point where support is like they're going to be there for you regardless of what happens. And when you're pushed, it's like you're almost afraid to like do anything wrong because you fear consequences.
You've ran at every level possible for a track athlete. Thinking back to college, did you have teammates who were there because mom and dad pushed them to be there and they didn't actually want to be there? And like we've talked to some other people who there's this experience in college where the athlete kept playing because mom and dad expected them to keep playing. Did you experience that at all with any of your teammates?
I didn't necessarily experience that. One thing I did experience, though, was I remember one of my teammates, he had a bad performance and he was really scared to tell his parents how he did. And I was just looking at him like, what's the issue? Like, what's gonna happen? And then he's just like, I guess parents aren't gonna do anything, but his dad would just kind of give him like the disappointed look, or like this, you keep messing up here, you keep messing up there, and stuff like that. But for the most part, a lot of people were there because they were either A, on scholarship, or B, they just wanted to continue running because they enjoyed it and they wanted to, be around a community and be around teammates and stuff, be a part of a team and things like that. Luckily, most of my teammates didn't really have that external pressure from their parents by the time they got to college.
Awesome. One of the things that I talk about a lot with parents is the idea of specialization. And you're in an individual sport that's still part of a team. So there's certain levels of specialization there. But when you were younger, at your youngest ages, did you play multiple sports before you landed on track, or has it always been track through and through?
Yeah, so when I first started playing sports, I actually played soccer. I played soccer from third grade up until about eighth grade, so about 5 years ish, about 8 to 13, and kind of just did that. And then my plan was to continue playing in high school, and then I knew people who ran track, so I was like, I can try track out to get better for soccer. But I just ended up didn't play in ninth grade, so I didn't pick up track until 10th grade. But I kind of just fell in love with track, and yeah, the rest has been running ever since, pretty much.
So that's interesting because you and I met because of that Death of Recklick video. That's when we first started DMing each other. And we hear so much about kids not getting the opportunity to pick up a new sport after sometimes third grade. And you're a dang Olympian and didn't start running your sport until 10th grade. So, and you kind of stumbled into it. You ran track to help soccer, but it ended up being track was the sport that was where you fell in love with it. So what I'm interested to hear from you is what it was like to pick up a sport so late. I put late in quotation marks compared to what the culture is saying. And then obviously you had natural talent there because you don't get as good as you are without being naturally gifted, but you were still probably a little behind when you first started. What was that like to pick up a sport that you'd never done before and have to start competing in it?
What's interesting is that when I started, I didn't feel like I started late. I was just doing it for the sake of doing it. This is actually funny, but when I first started running track, the only reason why I did it was because I wanted to be a more well-rounded student that would look good for college applications. I wasn't trying to get any scholarships in track. I wasn't trying to go to the Olympics. It was just something for me to do, just so I can have an extracurricular activity to put on my college applications. Because I was always good in the classroom, but I just knew it would look better for college applications if I, had something else under my belt. And at first, when I first started, I was getting whooped. I was losing a lot, and I wasn't winning races at all for real. And then luckily I had a coach at the time who told me he thinks I have a lot of ability and a lot of potential, but I just need to stick with it and get in shape. And so I believed him, and the rest has been history after that.
How long did it take you to find the 800?
I found it
right away.
Yeah, pretty much right away. Okay. Within 2 weeks of running, my coach told me, yeah, you're going to run the 800. And
They knew.
Yeah, he knew for sure.
All right, so 10th grade, you're running for the first time. You're getting whooped. When did the love hit? How long did it take you to get the bug and realize, you know what? I wanted this for a college application, but I actually kind of really enjoy this.
I think it probably was my first year. I think, because for me, it's when I start something, I like to see it to completion. And so I remember being in 10th grade, I saw myself getting better. And so that, just seeing the progression within that year itself, it made me all right, this is something I actually really do enjoy doing, and I'm glad that I picked this sport, and I can't wait to like see what I can do in 11th and 12th grade. But I will say, towards the end of my 11th grade year, I think that's when I really, really started to love it and started to like have the realization that, maybe I can take this to the next level in college, and maybe it's something that, I should consider. Because before I had wanted no parts of college track or college athletics, because I thought it was, one, the workouts were going to be too hard, and two, it would just be too hard to balance with academics because I knew school came first. But yeah, my junior year came and I started having performances where it's like, okay, I can do this. Like, I really enjoy doing this. So then that summer, I really made sure that I stayed in shape going into my senior season, because at the end of my first season, I didn't do anything at all just because I just didn't know what to do. And then I came back my junior year completely out of shape, and I said, yeah, never again. I'm never doing that ever again. And so, yeah, definitely, I would say, like, I fell in love with it my first year, but really my second year, I really, really enjoyed it my second year.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but what little I know about track, your area of Maryland is a pretty track heavy area where it's not like you were rolling out and going against scrubs. You're competing against some of the best in the country from day one.
Pretty much, yeah. The DMV area, PG County, has a very rich track history, and it definitely, like, yes, Maryland's a small state, but man, the talent we have here is insane. Especially when I was coming up, like, there were people who were All-Americans and different various events. One of my rivals in the state, he was All-American in the 400, and I would have to battle him in the 400, and I was just like, dang, man, how am I going to beat him? And then the 800 was the same thing. Like, there were guys there who were really good, and I just, wanted to work my way up and be number one. Like, I wasn't going to be satisfied until I had that number one spot for the most part.
One of the things that you like talking about a lot is the pressure that parents often put on their kids. I know that's kind of a soapbox issue almost for you. Before we get into big picture, how would you have responded if your parents were one of the insane put pressure on, insane is a bad word, but the intense put pressure on you all the time, as opposed to the way that, would you have responded differently, you think, or do you think you still would have done it the way you did?
I think I would have responded a little bit different. I think I probably wouldn't have liked it as much or enjoyed it as much, because I know the kind of pressure that they would have put on me would have been an unhealthy kind of pressure. And then I get the pressure, and then I get the comparison from like different, like, oh, you see this person, he's doing X, Y, Z, and what are you doing? Stuff like that. And I just would have hated it, and I would have not enjoyed it as much. I probably would have still did it, but it definitely wouldn't have been as fun, or I would have had the same drive that I've had, since high school, of wanting to be the best. And that's the one thing that I'm really grateful for, is that, like, this track thing was something that I've always wanted for myself. So it was never, and just having that motivation for myself, it made it easy to want to push, because I want to be great. I didn't have to wait for my coaches to tell me to do X, Y, and Z, or my parents to tell me to do X, Y, and Z. I wanted it for myself. So it was always that. People always ask me all the time, like, how do you stay motivated? And for me, it's like, I'm always motivated because I want this. Like, my goals are going to keep me motivated. And I know even if days where I don't feel like running, my goals don't care if I don't feel like it. My goals are my goals, and I know what I need to do to get to those goals. So I'm going to continue to do those things.
So put yourself in the, let's say, coach for a parent who has a kid who has set goals, but they're not as intrinsically motivated as it sounds like you are. Like, a kid has said he wants to be all conference in whatever their sport is, but they're not putting the work in. How would you coach a parent to support that athlete in a way that doesn't negatively push them, but reminds them of what they set their goals as so that they can continue to reach them?
I would tell that parent to just remind the athlete of what their goals are and just say, hey, like you said you wanted to do this. Are you doing, and it's not like a daily check-in, but it's like maybe a weekly check-in or bi-weekly check-in of like, are you doing the things necessary to get to the goals that you want to get to? Because you don't want to look back, at the end of the season and realize that you didn't hit your goals because you were slacking off or because you were lazy. And then on the flip side, we have to I would tell the parent, like, don't put too much pressure on them. Make sure that this athlete's goals are their goals and not your goals for the athlete. Because a lot of times kids will have these goals, but they're their parents' goals. They're not necessarily the kid's goals. Like the kid might not want to do sports in college, but the parent wants them to. Or the kid might want to, just hang out with their friends. And that's totally okay. But I do think when the kid says, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and they put it in the atmosphere, then I think there is a level of accountability that a parent can do to make sure the kid is getting there. And also making sure that the kid is being responsible. Because a lot of times, like I volunteer coach at a high school now as well. And I talk to the kids all the time. They have all these goals, but they're not being held accountable. Like the parents don't really hold them accountable. They're kind of the parents are looking at the coach like, oh, why is they doing X, Y, Z? And it's like, no, what are you doing to make sure that this kid is, doing what they need to do? And so I think there's definitely needs to be a healthy balance of holding the kid accountable and then also making sure that the parent is doing their job to make sure the kid is holding the kid accountable as well. Because sometimes parents will blame coaches and then coaches will blame the athlete. It's just an endless finger pointing in every direction except for the thumb back at themselves.
And I think that healthy balance that you talk about is the part that's so hard, because what comes naturally to us is, okay, kid, you said you wanted to be all conference, get out of bed and go work out. Like that, we feel like we need to push them to go do it if they said that. And that's effective to an extent, like to do it that way. But one of the things I've had conversations about is what is effective often isn't what's healthy. And the healthy way to lead that situation is what you're saying, like remind them of their goals and then let them make the decision to go do it. Because if they have set the goal and they choose not to do the work, then they're going to experience disappointment. And then that disappointment ideally is what makes them realize, oh crap, I actually have to go do this, as opposed to when you're pushing them all the time, they never have the chance to learn how to push through those days. Like you said, I don't want to run today, but my goals tell me I've got to go run today or else I'm not going to go reach my goals. And when they have that perspective, that's when the intrinsic motivation starts to be built.
Exactly. And I think too, just like you said, reminding the kid of like, this is what you said you wanted to do. And the kid, you can't do it for your kid. And I think a lot of parents, they want to be able to do it for their kid and they just can't. Like, and every kid is different. Like, you have to know your kids as well. Know your athlete as a coach too. Like some kids will like the whole tough love approach, and some other athletes, they don't really need that. Like I have a kid on my team who always asks me every day, is there anything I need to work on? And it's good because I can tell he's hungry, but at the same time, I know he doesn't have necessarily the confidence that some of the other
There's
kids
some insecurity there if he's asking every single day what he needs to work on.
Exactly. And I never like felt that before. So I'm like, dang, you ask me every single day, like, is there anything I need to work on? I'm like, just do what you normally do. But one thing I've been trying to tell him is like, what I want you to work on is actually believing in the work that you've been doing. And so that's, I think one way to push kids also is those mental aspects as well. Like I know whenever I have kids and they start getting involved in sports, I'm really going to push them in terms of like, gratitude. Like make sure you always find something to be grateful for. Make sure you find things that you can learn, and just giving them healthy habits that they can adopt early on. Because I do believe that if a kid has good habits early on, they're going to be light years ahead of their competition. Not even just from a talent standpoint, but just from a durability standpoint, longevity standpoint, a mental toughness standpoint, because there's so many little things that athletes do. It's so much more than just, bouncing the ball or throwing the ball or running down a track. There's so many other factors that go into play to becoming the best athlete that they can be.
I want to switch gears a little bit. It's kind of on the pushing front, and I'm going to be treading on some light, awkward ice here because I am me, but I think it's an important conversation for us to have and to put out into the world. My background is a white rural town. My high school was 91% white when I graduated. We had 11 black kids. Someone went to my principal my junior year and said, "Miss Dockery, how many black kids go to our school?" And she named all 11 of them. And we had like 1,100 kids. So I come from a very different background than you do. So the things I speak from, the things I draw from are totally different from you. And one thing I've noticed in the comments of our podcast clips and the things I've done is there's a distinct difference in parenting styles between white families and black families, especially black dads. And that there's no condemnation or judgment there. It's just there's a different style because of different backgrounds we come from. You also come from an immigrant family, so you've seen that side of things. And I don't want to make assumptions, but from your experience running at an HBCU, living in predominantly black areas, can you give us some perspective on how these mental health conversations and tools are viewed within the black community and how you'd like to see some things change there?
Yeah, so I think, within the black community, I think a lot of black fathers specifically, a lot of them tend to lead with the tough love approach. And they're just, win at all costs. What are you doing? Especially like sports like football and basketball, especially. And, they tend to be, just a little bit more aggressive, right? And some kids, they need that. Other kids might not necessarily need that. And I think, I remember one time I was in high school and I witnessed parents curse out coaches. And I was just like, what is going on here? I've never seen this before, all because they lost a football game. I remember seeing that and I was just thinking to myself, it was never that serious. But I know a lot of, parents within that community, they take sports really serious. And so because of that, now they're going to lead with that and be as aggressive as they can to push their kids, obviously because there's scholarship opportunities there as well. And then a lot of times everyone just thinks, and this is not even just black community, but I just think in general, a lot of parents think that their kids are the greatest thing walking. And so if their kid isn't getting a certain amount of playing time or if their kid isn't, doing something, they're quick to blame the coaches rather than asking the kid, what are you doing at practice to make yourself better? What are you doing here to, improve so you can get more playing time and stuff like that? A lot of times they just go straight to the coach and why aren't you putting my son in the game? You need to do X, Y, and Z. And then from the mental standpoint, mental health is something that's definitely not as talked about within the black community. It's getting better, but we have a long ways to go. And even in the immigrant community as well, still have a long ways to go in that regard too. And so, if a kid tells you, yeah, I'm depressed, I'm like, why are you depressed for? You have a roof over your head, you have this, you have that. You have nothing to be depressed about. Relax, type of deal.
Why do you think that is? From your experience, I'm at this point just simply interested because I think for all of us to be introduced to different perspectives is a healthy thing. So that's your lived experience, different than mine. Why is it so different in those communities than it is in others?
I think because just that's how they were brought up. And I think, the cycle just continues to repeat itself. And it's not until now where there's so much more education and resources available to us that we're starting to learn some of these things and realizing that, okay, maybe some of these habits were a little bit unhealthy. Because even in the sports psychology space, it's still fairly new with some of the mental tools that athletes use to make themselves better. And yeah, I just think it's an education thing. And I think the more education is involved and the more research that people get to do and the more information that's available, people will begin to learn, and then they'll begin to grow, and then be able to implement what they've learned through that. So I think that's probably why it is. Just education wise, it's just not all the way there, but it's getting there.
What's one of, I mean, I know mental health is so important to you in your journey, in your athletic journey, but also in your coaching. What's one thing that pops in your head as I ask this that you wish parents knew as a tool, mental health wise, that could help their athlete?
One great tool that I wish parents knew was how important it is for your kid to believe in themselves. And I say that because I have this philosophy of being your biggest fan. And when I say, who's your biggest fan, like if you're a big fan of somebody, like say I'm a big fan of LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes. He just lost the Super Bowl yesterday. You would tell someone like Patrick Mahomes, if you're a big fan of him, like, yo, it's just an off day, like, you'll be fine. And I think a lot of times kids don't do that with themselves. It's so easy to fanboy and fangirl over other people, but we don't necessarily fanboy and fangirl over ourselves. And it's not in the sense of like, oh, I'm the best and everyone else sucks and da 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 da. But it's more so, no, I'm a big fan of myself to the point where I know if I mess up, I'm going to bounce back quickly. I know I believe in my potential. I respect my talent enough, but I also respect my competitors as well. And I think a lot of times we sell ourselves short because we're so focused on what the other person is able to do. We see their stats and we see, oh, I can't beat them because they've done X, Y, and Z. But it's like, no, you can do the same thing too. You just have to be willing to put the work in and be willing to put that work in.
I think what you said right there about being a fan of yourself and trusting your abilities, when it's at such a competition when a parent is constantly coaching or critiquing, because to a kid that feels like criticism. And so when the parent, you get off the field, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. And why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? Well, I can't be my biggest fan if the person who's supposed to be my biggest fan, who is my superhero, my parent, is constantly breaking me down. And I think that's one of the important parts of, I've shared it on here before, like our brains need to hear positive things 5 to 10 times more the younger you are. As you get older, it's 5. As you get younger, it's in the 10 range. We got to hear those things 5 to 10 times more than negative things to start to believe them. So if we are constantly critiquing our kids, there's no way they can be their biggest fan because all they hear is mom and dad's voice of why didn't you do better?
Exactly. And that's the thing, that becomes their self-talk, right? Learning how to build up your self-talk is so important regardless of what sport you play, because there's going to be moments where those mistakes do come, and it's like, how quickly can you bounce back from those? If your self-talk is bad, you're gonna dwell on those negative comments. But if your self-talk is good, you'll be able to encourage yourself relatively quickly. And then also just being more process oriented than results oriented. You can have the end goal in mind, but you're process driven and results focused. So yeah, you process driven and results focused. Like, the goal, you see it, that's what you're focused on, but you're driven by your principles and your process. And a lot of times we get so caught up in the outcome of like, all right, did I win or did I lose? Did I set a PR? Did I do X, Y, and Z? But really, like, those things that help you get to those things of like, practicing, hydrating, stretching, those basic things that seem boring and minute and dumb, not dumb, but like boring, and it's not as glamorous as like the winning. Those are the things that's going to help you win on the most consistent basis. Those are going to be the things that help you stay healthy, because being healthy is a big part of the game itself. If you can't play, if you're too injured to play, then you're not going to be able to play. But just things like that, and just focusing on those things rather than always being so focused on the outcome or the scholarships and things like that. I think that's something that parents can also help kids with as well. It's just be more in the process. And clap for them during the process and not just only when they win, but clap for them. Say, hey, like that was a great practice today. Great job. I saw you working on this thing. Great job. I'm glad that you're stretching after every single practice. Great job. I'm glad that you're uplifting your teammates. I'm glad that you're doing these things. Those habit-based things I think will help a ton for the kids' confidence going into the sport.
On that front, on the process versus results, anytime I post something talking about how the goal of youth sports is to learn the tools more so than it is to win a game, I inevitably get some dad quoting Ricky Bobby saying, if you ain't first, you're last. And they just don't get that sometimes the result's not controllable. Most often the result's not controllable. So I want to give a tangible example of this here. You are the fastest 800 runner in the country of Nigeria of all time. I'm going to let that sink in for the listeners. The fastest person running a race in a country of all time. When you set that national record, were you going out thinking about running the fastest race, or were you going out thinking about the things you needed to do to run a fast race?
Definitely the things I needed to do to run the fast race. And it's funny because in track, we get so caught up in the times and the records and stuff like that, when really it's like, I want to just focus on, one, being as competitive as I possibly can, and two, definitely want to do everything I need to do to win the race, right? I think for me personally, winning races, I prefer to win races over running fast times. I know if I win, the time will come with it. But I definitely want to do the things necessary to be able to put my best race together.
Okay. I want to switch a little bit because we have too much time with you left here. There's something, you have reached the pinnacles of your sport. And D1 athlete, an Olympian, you're now a professional. According to the NCAA, only 5.2% of male high school track athletes will run anywhere in college, D1 through D3. Only about 1.9% will go D1. The chances of a high school track athlete to make the Olympics are 0.3%. That's 100,000ths of a percent. So for parents who have, or parents of kids who have these big aspirational goals, they want to be you, essentially. How would you coach them to support their kids as they chase those goals while also keeping them grounded of the probabilities of getting there? Because we don't want to kill our kids' dream, but we also don't want to set them up for failure as well. So where do you find that healthy balance in there?
Yeah, I would tell them to make sure that they fall in love with the work, because you're going to spend so much time in the work versus the end result, right? And so full transparency, I remember after my Olympic race, someone came up to me and was like, hey, you good? Like, it's over. And in that moment, I was just thinking to myself, like, wow, it's really over. Like, this moment that I've been working towards for so long is done, right? And now all I'm left with is either A, I can take a break a little bit, the season's over, or B, go back to training and run the next race. And so I've learned to really enjoy the process it takes for me to get to the end goal, but also realizing and recognizing that the end goal isn't necessarily in my control, but I can control, how I show up in the process. I can control, the work I'm able to put in. And that's the most of the time you're going to spend. There's a quote that I really like where it says, you spend more time climbing the mountain than you do at the peak. And so you're going to spend so much time in the trenches. You're going to spend so much time in the weight room. You're going to spend so much time, doing the things necessary to get to those goals. And when you do or don't hit them, you won't be as crushed because you're so in love and so immersed within the journey and the process it takes to get there. So that's something that I would really tell kids, and even tell parents to make sure that they tell their kids as well, like, really enjoy the process. Just learn to have fun with the process. Learn to have fun with it. Yes, you have big goals and big dreams and aspirations, it's not the end of the world if you don't hit it, but just make sure you have the most fun as possible along the way. And I can honestly say I have had so much fun in this journey and so much fun along the way. Granted, I am grateful that have been able to, hit those lofty goals and things like that. But I also know that I've had more fun climbing and getting there versus actually hitting it itself.
Two more questions, then we'll get you out of here. This is one of my favorite questions to ask, and I've started doing this in almost every episode. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What's one question I haven't asked you that you think I need to ask you because people need to hear the answer?
Ooh, that's a good question. One question could be, how do I get to loving the process more than the result?
And what's your answer to that?
I think my answer to that really is just finding ways to make it fun for you. And what I mean by that, because for example, everyone's not going to be a track athlete. Sometimes track practices can be very gruesome and grueling, and sometimes boring and painful, right? But just finding those simple acts in the process can help you so much. Because there's going to be some parts of the sport that you absolutely love that's going to draw you into it. Yes, the competition is great, and yeah, we love competition. But if it's like running that you like doing, go out for a run and do that. Like if you're a basketball player and you like just shooting around, shoot around. Like there's going to be little things that you can do about the process that you really enjoy. And if there's those things that you enjoy, practice those things more, and then also still work on your weaknesses as well. But really, those things that you actually enjoy about the process, really enjoy those things and really do more of those things, because it'll help your mental health, it'll help your physical health, and it'll help your game as well. So definitely really do those things that you really love about the game and do them more as much as you can.
All right, last question for you. Youth sports is really hard. Like it's a really stressful time for parents as we try to love our kids, as we try to coach them and get the best out of them and all the things that we've been talking about today. I want to end the episode on an encouragement so that parents can leave this episode smiling when they turn it off. What is an encouragement you can give parents as they navigate this entirely stressful world they're going through today?
Yeah, when it comes to youth sports, keep the main thing. And for a lot of kids, the main thing is just having fun and hanging out with their friends. That's really all they care about. Especially if your kid is like in elementary school, he's not going to the Olympics. He or she is not going to the Olympics tomorrow. He or she is not signing a scholarship tomorrow, nor are they signing, a draft letter tomorrow and stuff like that. So make sure that your kids are constantly having fun, right? Because if they're not having fun, they're not going to want to go to practice. Make practice something that they look forward to going to rather than something that they dread. So just keep it fun for them, and yeah, just let it be fun, and then just help them use this as the character development pretty much. That's what youth sports is for. Teaching them how to win, teaching them how to lose, teaching them how to be great teammates, teaching them, the foundations of being a good athlete and how to move and things like that. So just make sure your kids are having fun, because sports is meant to be fun. They're not meant to be dreaded and annoying, like especially at that youth age. So just have fun. Make sure your kids are having fun. Constantly ask them if they're having fun first and foremost. Like regardless of how they do in the game, you're a fan of them. You'll love them regardless, but make sure that they're having fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Idose, thanks for being here with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this episode.
That's it for today's episode. If you like the show, I'm going to invite you to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it'd be a huge help for you to write up a small review. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button as well. If this episode helped you or think it could help someone else, the best way you can help us grow the show is by sharing this episode with a friend. Most of all, we hope you have a great week watching your kids play the sport they love. Enjoy your time with them. Have a great week, everybody.